You are not undisciplined. You are domesticated. You are trained to feel guilt whenever your biology speaks louder than your ambition. You are taught that resistance is a flaw, that comfort is weakness, that inconsistency is proof you are inferior. That lie is convenient for everyone who benefits from your self-hatred. Machiavelli understood this mechanism before the modern world had laboratories to prove it. He watched men destroy themselves trying to act virtuous in a world that rewards structure, leverage, and positioning. He knew that moralizing human nature is how rulers lose power and how ordinary people lose their lives, one delayed decision at a time. Here is the hidden law you were never supposed to learn. Discipline, as you were taught, is a war against the human brain. And the human brain was built to win, not because it is noble, because it is ancient. Your brain did not evolve to chase long-term dreams. It evolved to keep you alive today. It wants immediate reward. It wants certainty. It wants the path that costs the least energy. It wants to avoid pain, avoid risk, avoid effort that does not pay right now. That is not metaphor. That is design. So when you don't get up, when you delay the work, when you choose the screen over the skill, that is not lack of character. That is a system executing its core directive. Preserve energy, harvest dopamine, avoid strain. And here is the conflict that makes you miserable. Modern life demands the opposite. Society expects you to behave like a machine, consistent, productive, resilient, long-term focused. But your brain is not a machine. It is a survival organ wearing a suit. So you try to force discipline through willpower. You try to dominate yourself with motivation. You chant phrases. You watch videos. You promise tomorrow will be different. For a moment, you feel powerful. Then fatigue arrives. And fatigue always wins. Because willpower is not power. It is a battery. You can't motivate your way through a life built to drain you. Machiavelli would call your approach naive, not because you are weak, because you are relying on something unstable. A prince who relies on the moods of the crowd loses the crown. A person who relies on mood to execute loses the future. That's why the disciplined never fight the brain directly. They manipulate the battlefield. They understand something cold. The brain always takes the path of least resistance. So you stop begging it to choose the hard path. You redesign reality so the hard path becomes the easiest. This is not self-improvement. This is self-rule. And Machiavelli's entire philosophy is self-rule in disguise. He didn't teach how to be evil. He taught how power actually works when you remove fantasy and look at the mechanism underneath. Power is not what you feel. Power is what happens. So you stop trying to be disciplined as a personality trait. You start building discipline as a consequence. You do not become consistent by being heroic. You become consistent by removing the need to be heroic. Most people never do this because it destroys their favorite identity, the suffering striver, the person who tries hard, fails hard, then uses effort as proof of goodness. Machiavelli would laugh at that person, not because effort is useless, because effort without positioning is a ritual of defeat. So let's strip this down. When you fail to do the task, it is almost never because you didn't want it enough. It is because the environment around you was designed to make the opposite behavior effortless. You wake up and your phone is right there. Your brain does not choose distraction. Distraction is already in your hand. You want to train, but your clothes are hidden, your shoes are buried, your room is cold, the couch is warm. Training is not just difficult, it is inconvenient. You want to study, but your desk is chaotic, your notifications are active, your browser is a casino of infinite stimuli. Focus is not just hard, it is unsupported. And you keep blaming yourself for not winning in a rigged arena. Stop doing that. Machiavelli's first move was always the same. Control the conditions, secure the perimeter, design the incentives, reduce exposure to unnecessary threats. That is discipline, not force. Design, because your brain does not respond to speeches. It responds to friction. If the wrong behavior is easier, you will do it. Not because you are weak, because you are human. So the strategy is brutal. Make the wrong behavior costly. Make the right behavior cheap. Not emotionally, mechanically. You don't resist temptation. You starve it by removing easy access. You don't fight laziness. You make laziness inconvenient. This is the first reversal. Most people attempt to change behavior while keeping the same environment. That is like trying to win a war while refusing to move your army. You redesign the terrain. You want to train? Your training clothes are not in a drawer. They are laid out like a uniform. Shoes by the bed, water ready. No decisions left for the morning. You want to study? Your materials are open before you sit down. Your desk has one purpose. Your phone is not nearby. It is absent. You want to write? Your document is already open. The first sentence is already started. Starting is no longer a cliff. It's a step. Because the real enemy is initiation. The brain hates the beginning because the beginning costs energy. Once you are in motion, it relaxes. So disciplined people don't rely on motivation. They rely on momentum. And momentum is engineered. Machiavelli did not win with brute force. He won with timing and positioning. You do the same. You remove choices in advance when your mind is colder and cleaner. You do not negotiate with yourself in the moment of weakness. Negotiation is where you lose. Because your brain is a lawyer, it can justify anything when comfort is on the table. Tomorrow, later, just one video, just a quick look, just a break. And you call it me time. No, it is the survival brain defending comfort like it's a kingdom. So you take the kingdom away from it. This is where habit stacking enters like a knife. You already have automatic routines. You brush your teeth. You drink water. You sit down at certain times. You open apps without thinking. Those routines are rails. You don't build discipline from scratch. You graft it onto existing rails. After I brush my teeth, I do 2 minutes of movement. After I pour coffee, I write 1 paragraph. After I sit at my desk, I open the work tab before anything else. No pause, no gap. Because gaps invite sabotage. The brain hijacks gaps to reroute you to reward. So you compress the sequence until the new behavior becomes an extension of the old one. The old habit becomes the trigger. The new habit becomes the default response. This is not motivation. This is conditioning. You begin small on purpose. 2 minutes, 1 page, 1 set, 1 paragraph. Not because you are fragile, because you are strategic. The goal is not output at first. The goal is obedience. You are training your nervous system to execute without debate, and execution is a form of power. Most people never build this because their ego demands intensity. They want dramatic change so they can feel dramatic. Machiavelli would call that vanity. Vanity wants to look strong. Strategy wants to be strong. So you start small, because small is repeatable, and repetition is what builds identity. You are not what you promise. You are what you repeat. This is where the illusion of discipline finally cracks. Discipline isn't something you have. It is something your environment and routines produce. And if your environment is built for distraction, comfort, and instant dopamine, you're not undisciplined. You're accurately responding to the incentives around you. Now comes the second hidden law. Procrastination is not laziness. It is a poorly designed system. When a behavior is not obvious, not attractive, not easy, and not satisfying, it will not survive. The brain does not bond with suffering that pays later. It bonds with what rewards now. So you make it obvious, you make it easy, you make it satisfying. You do not try to love the process. You try to remove friction from the start, because the start is where most people die. They don't fail in the middle. They fail at the door, and you are going to stop dying at the door. Here is what you still don't want to admit. You're not battling discipline. You're battling an identity that benefits from failing. The version of you that procrastinates is not just lazy. It is protected. Protected by excuses. Protected by comfort. Protected by the social permission to be average. Because the moment you become consistent, you lose something. You lose the right to complain without acting. You lose the right to call yourself potential. You lose the right to fantasize instead of build. And most people would rather keep the fantasy than face the accountability of execution. Machiavelli would see that as the true weakness, not laziness, but attachment. Attachment to the old self. So now we move to the level that actually changes everything. Identity. Most people try to change what they do, the powerful change, who they are. Not with affirmations, with evidence. Your brain is a court, and identity is the verdict it reaches after it observes your behavior repeatedly. Every time you execute, you cast a vote. I'm a person who follows through. Every time you delay, you cast a vote. I'm a person who escapes. You don't become disciplined by wanting it. You become disciplined by stacking votes until the verdict becomes unavoidable. This is why small habits are lethal. They're not small in meaning, they're small in cost. A 2-minute action is cheap, but its psychological signal is massive. I obey my own orders. That is sovereignty. Machiavelli wrote about princes who could command others. But the deeper question is this: can you command yourself? Most people can't. They issue orders to themselves and then disobey, casually, daily. What does that teach the nervous system? That your voice is negotiable, that your plans are suggestions, that your promises are theater. So the first step toward real discipline is brutal. You stop making promises you can't enforce. You shrink the promise until it becomes enforceable. Then you enforce it like law. A sovereign does not pass laws he cannot uphold. That invites rebellion. Your rebellion is your procrastination. So you become a ruler with a smaller law at first, but absolute enforcement. 1 page, every day. No drama. 1 set, every day. No debate. 1 paragraph, every day. No exceptions. This is how empires begin. Not with grand speeches, but with consistent enforcement. Now let's cut into the biggest lie in productivity culture. You do not need to enjoy discipline. The idea that you must love the process is a trap for emotionally dependent people. It keeps them waiting to feel inspired, waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel passionate. That is not discipline. That is dependence. Machiavelli would call it slavery to mood. The disciplined are not more passionate than you. They are less emotional about action. They made the action inevitable. They took the decision out of the morning, out of the evening, out of the weak moment. They decided once in advance when their mind was cold. Shoes by the bed, alarm away from reach, phone blocked, schedule fixed, environment shaped. So even when they don't want to do it, they do it anyway, not through force, but through default. Default is everything. Your brain follows defaults. The crowd follows defaults. History follows defaults. Machiavelli built power by controlling defaults. What people see, what people fear, what they expect. You will build discipline the same way, by controlling your own defaults. Now we install the next layer: silence. Most people leak power through their mouth. They announce goals, they explain plans, they seek encouragement, they ask for accountability. What they are really doing is asking for permission. Machiavelli would despise that. A prince does not announce a campaign before the army is assembled. He moves in silence and reveals results. Because speaking too early does two things. It invites doubt from weaker minds, and it gives your brain the reward of being someone before you have become it. Your brain loves that shortcut. You tell someone you're going to change. You get a small hit of validation, and the urgency drops. So you stop talking. You do not broadcast your discipline, you demonstrate it. Silence is not just privacy. Silence is pressure. When you stop explaining, people feel it. When you stop announcing, your actions become heavier. And more importantly, when you stop talking, you stop negotiating. Now we bring in frame control, the Machiavellian core. Your brain has a frame, comfort first. Your environment has a frame, distraction first. Society has a frame, shame if you fail. You replace the frame. The frame becomes, execution is normal, not heroic, normal. You do not try to be disciplined. You act like someone who is disciplined and let the identity catch up. That is not fake, that is strategic. Machiavelli wrote that appearing a certain way matters because men judge with their eyes. Identity works similarly. Your brain judges you by observable behavior, so you give it evidence. Now the final step, identity death. The old you must die, the pleaser who waits to feel motivated, the explainer who negotiates with himself, the victim who needs comfort to act, the servant who obeys impulses and calls it just who I am. That identity is not you. It is conditioning, and it dies when you stop feeding it. You feed it every time you delay and then excuse. You feed it every time you break a promise and shrug. You feed it every time you trade your future for a quick hit and call it rest. So you cut the food supply. You stop making big promises. You start making small laws, and you enforce them without emotion. Execution becomes boring. Routine becomes silent. Progress becomes inevitable. That is the sovereign identity. Unimpressed by mood, unreadable to temptation, calm under friction. And here is the part most people can't handle. This person does not seek validation. They do not post their progress to feel real. They do not announce their goals to feel important. They do not beg motivation to arrive. They act, then act again. Machiavelli would recognize this as virtue, controlled force directed by intelligence, not aggression, not drama. Control. Now you understand the real meaning of discipline. Discipline is not self-control. It is self-governance. It is the ability to design a life where the correct behavior happens even when you don't feel like it. And once you build this, you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" Because you see it clearly. Nothing was wrong with you. The system was wrong. You are trying to win with raw willpower in a world engineered to drain it. Now you build fortresses instead of speeches, defaults instead of hopes, laws instead of moods. Most people will never do this. They will keep chasing motivation like a drug. They will keep moralizing their failures because it feels easier than redesigning their world. If you want to stay average, you can stop here. If you want the sovereign version of you, the one Machiavelli would respect, you already know the requirement. Stop negotiating. Start engineering. And if you're still here, you're not inspired, you're selected. Not everyone can tolerate this. That's the point.